Good evening. You're watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman Television. First, the headlines. Oman and UK military forces continue the integration process, and Commander of Royal Army of Oman inspects the maritime task force ship Al-Dhafira. The UNICEF warns that the Yemeni crisis risks millions of children and families without food, clean water and sanitation. And Afghanistan prepares for parliamentary elections despite deep security concerns and ongoing fighting in many provinces. Those were the headlines, and now for the news in detail. In a scenario-based event for the Omani-UK joint exercise Swift Sword 3, the Sultan's armed forces, together with other military and non-military formations, continued their integration process with the British Royal Armed Forces. The Exercise Control Headquarters received the British General Staff and took the necessary steps to accommodate the integration of forces under a single command, to effectively interpret the concepts of unified joint forces in carrying military operations. In accordance with the plans and procedures for Omani-British Joint Exercise Al-Sayf Al-Sariya 3, Major General Matar bin Salim Al-Balushi, Commander of Royal Army of Oman, Chief of the Joint Forces, paid a visit to the maritime task force ship Al-Dhafira to follow up with the event and readiness of naval forces to implement later stages of the exercise. The Royal Army of Oman commander was briefed on the achieved tasks and duties by Royal Navy of Oman in Al-Shumukh 2 exercise. He was also briefed on the procedures and actions to be taken against assumed difficulties by the Navy, coordinate and implement missions and duties in Al-Sayf Al-Sariya 3. The United Nations Children's Agency said Yemen's economic crisis and the relentless violence at a key Red Sea port city risk leaving millions of children and families without food, clean water and sanitation. The UNICEF said water and sewage services face the risk of collapse due to soaring fuel prices affected by the local currency plunge. It warned in a statement that families are unable to afford basic food items and that the number of 18.5 million people who are unsure of where their next meal is coming from may soon dramatically increase. The agency also said the violence in the port city of Hodeidah threatens choking off essential aid. Yemen's war has been raging for more than 3 years, spawning what the UN says is the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Afghanistan is going ahead with parliamentary elections tomorrow, despite deep security concerns and ongoing fighting in as many as 20 out of the country's 34 provinces. For the first time, the Election Commission has equipped polling stations with biometric identification systems. The Deputy Chair of the Independent Election Commission, Wasima Badghisi, said the Commission is hopeful for a peaceful polling day. More than 50,000 members of Afghan security forces will be deployed to secure the polling stations. Afghan officials announced 3 levels of security belts at each polling center. Police and members of the intelligence force will make up the first 2 belts, covering a distance of 3,000 to 5,000 meters from polling centers. The 3rd security belt will be patrolled jointly by police and Afghan army. 2,565 candidates are vying for 249 seats in the lower house of parliament, including 417 women candidates. Voters will be able to cast ballots at more than 19,000 polling stations in 33 provinces. Southeast Asian countries will hold their first joint maritime exercise with China in the waters surrounding Zhejiang next week. Speaking at the start of the Association of Southeast Nations ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting, Ng Eng Hen said that the full troop exercise, which was first announced in August, comes after successful indoor tabletop sessions and showcases the centrality of the 10-nation bloc. The region's defense ministers also proposed a joint maritime exercise with the US next year. They have gathered in Singapore together with the US Defense Chief Jim Mattis and his Chinese counterpart General Wei Feng for the security conference this weekend. Yesterday, a meeting between Mattis and Wei went on for longer than scheduled, but no new agreements were reached. EU Foreign Affairs Chief Federica Mogherini held a number of bilateral meetings today on the sidelines of the Asia-Europe meeting in Brussels. Mogherini greeted the Australian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Marise Payne, and the Secretary-General of ASEAN, Lim Jock Hoi, in the Belgian capital. The President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, also met the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang. The meeting brings together 30 European leaders with their counterparts from 21 Asian nations, as well as top officials from the European Union and Association of Southeast Asian Nations. A dam in the US opened its floodgates this week ahead of more heavy rainfall in already saturated parts of West and Central Texas. Video from the Lower Colorado River Authority shows floodgates on the Tom Miller Dam being opened on Tuesday. A bridge was destroyed earlier this week by raging floodwaters along the Llano River. Some people had to evacuate their homes and others had to be rescued. A seminar on Arabic language and national identity was held on Sultan Qaboos Youth Complex for Culture and Entertainment. The seminar highlighted the importance of Arabic language and its significance to national identity. On the sidelines of the seminar, Sheikh Khahlan Al-Kharousi, the Deputy Grand Mufti for the Sultanate of Oman, stressed that Arabic language is the most significant element in our identity, as it is the language of the Holy Quran and can encompass the new developments in various disciplines, arts and cultures. National Business Centre concluded the Ideas Development Programme organised by the National Business Centre, which is affiliated with Public Establishment for Industrial Estates. The 5-day programme targeted 22 Omani participants to assist them in transforming their commercial ideas into actual projects through the incubation of their creative ideas and guide them through the process. The Omani Association for Writers and Literati organised a poetry night for female poets from the Governorate of Buraymi. The female poets captured the audience as they recited heartfelt love and national poems that reflects the depth and beauty of Omani poetry. The event, which was attended by other poets and writers, reflects the Omani Association for Writers and Literati's care to nurture Omani creative talents and provides a platform for them to exchange and critique their pieces. With the aim of preserving the cultural heritage of the Sultanate, a camel race was organised in the Wilaya of Haima in the Governorate of Worcester. The 10-round race was organised by Oman Camel Racing Federation and witnessed the participation of camel breeders only from the Worcester Governorate. The race was sponsored by Occidental Oman and witnessed stiff competition among the participants. The event was accompanied by traditional Omani arts. At the end, the chief guest distributed prizes to camel breeders who achieved first place in the race. The revenue of 3- to 5-star hotels recorded an increase of 8.7% to reach more than 132 million Omani riyals by the end of last August, whilst the occupancy percentage of these hotels also recorded an increase by 3.4% to reach 56.5%. The National Centre for Statistics and Information, NCSI, stated that the number of hotel guests by the end of last August reached more than 942,000. According to the NCSI, the visitors from Europe represented the highest percentage of hotel guests, which reached more than 317,000, followed by Omanis, who were around 260,000, and then guests from other Gulf Cooperation Council countries, who reached around 136,000. And now for the general weather forecast around the Sultanate. Clear skies will prevail over most of the governorates, with chances of low clouds and fog late at night and early morning over the coasts of the Arabian Sea. Winds will be southeasterly light to moderate. Seas will be slight with a maximum wave height of 1.25 meters. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. Oman and UK military forces continue the integration process, and Commander of Royal Army of Oman inspects the Maritime Task Force ship Al-Zafira. The UNICEF warns that the Yemeni crisis risks millions of children and families without food, clean water and sanitation. And Afghanistan prepares for parliamentary elections despite deep security concerns and ongoing fighting in many provinces. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studios, it's good night.